right, welcome our four filmmakers, Carlos, Chase, Philip, Joe, come on up. All right, I'm going to go in order of the films that were shown. So I'll start with Carlos for Call Me Crazy. You sent me 3 films, all of which were very personal and distinct from one another. And each one had its own style and subject. This one's fully animated, of course. The other 2 were live action. One of them had no dialogue. So how do you know when you figured out the right form in which to tell your stories? Like, what's your process like for that?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, first of all. This is so cool. But to answer your question, I have one rule when making films in the moment of is this live action or animation, and that is if I can't do it with a camera, I'll just do it in animation because the film, like I said, a mountain on fire, I'm in space, my arm breaks through a wall. So I can't do that with like live action at the moment. So that's mainly the main rule I have for myself.
So it's your first animated film? You've done a bunch before this?
No, I've done it before.
Okay. Would you say your animation style is inspired by anybody in particular? Or?
I love Alex Hirsch. His animation style is one of my favorites. Gravity Falls is one of my all-time 2D animated shows. So it is very heavily inspired by his own art style. Yes.
Okay. And you also wrote the film, and it's clearly a poem that you wrote. So was this a poem that you had first, and then you made the movie, or did they both come together at the same time? Or?
I write poetry a lot, and the way I make films is I will just have like a little idea box, and if the idea just nags me enough, where I can just see like glimpse of how the film could go in my mind, I will just do it, because if I don't do it, I might as well just like explode. But yeah, if it nags me enough, that's when I know I'll do it, and that's when I do like, is it action, is it animation, what's gonna be the thing, yeah.
Okay. Chase, which I have not met you yet, and you're like all the way over there.
I'm so scared of you now.
Strangers in the Same Shirt, that was the second film. I used to be a wedding videographer, and so I've been to 100 weddings. I'm going to guess that maybe this idea came from being at a wedding. Is there any truth to that at all? Or?
I mean, I guess I used to DJ weddings a little bit back in the day,
Okay.
but I just like the idea of like this crazy guy like messing up his dad's wedding. And I was like, yeah, that seems like something we've all kind of dreamed of. Maybe not our fathers, I don't know, maybe we have, but yeah, it just seems like a fun, I don't know, it kind of came into its own.
Okay.
I'd say, so.
Well, this is a really great cast, these 2 actors, Andre Hyland and Darby Lee Stack. How did you find them and cast them? What was the casting process?
Well, I didn't do it on my own, let's just put it that way. I had a very good friend who had done a number of films and was kind of well known in the film festival community and was managed at this great place in LA. And he had read the script and helped me out on it, and he was just like, hey, like, this is really good. I'm gonna like hook you up with my manager, and because I know there's actors out there who want to do stuff like this that need stuff with the reels or whatever. And so came in contact with Darby, and I was like, she's awesome. She was in
The Holdovers.
Yeah, I almost always either say The Hangover or The Leftovers. Both great, pieces of work, but different genre clue. And then yeah, Andre was just like a home run for us. Like he's so talented, so good. To work with him is great. Like, I feel like there were parts of the script where we were both on the same page, and I was like, hey, like here's the idea. This is what I wrote down. If you got something better, like let's beat it, and we tried some things out. So it was a really fun, collaborative process working with them.
Yeah, I mean, I watch these movies dozens of times before I cautious when I get more and more attached to these characters, and I really love them. And I'd love someday to see them again. Like, I want to catch up with these two. Is there any chance of expanding this to a feature, or are we moving on to the next thing already?
Well, it's funny you should say that. Yeah, we got some things in the works right now. I feel like every filmmaker says that. But let's just say I'm very optimistic that we'll have a project here by the end of the year that we get to see them join up again and continue their little escapades. Maybe not the same characters, but the same type of brother-sister dynamic.
Yeah. Philip, Living Reality, that was the third film that we played. Fascinating movie. Looks like I got the right page here. Okay, there we are. The sitcom elements you came up with seem very real and familiar. Even the VHS style is just right, and that's a really hard thing to get right. I've seen a lot of filmmakers try, and they go too far with it, or they don't go far with it, but yeah, you got it just perfect. Was that a hard thing to figure out, just like on a technical level? Or?
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely was. I wanted to shoot with like actual like 2 cameras that they shot like a lot of like old TV shows on, but those were way too expensive. So we just shot the whole thing on like mini DV cameras, like a multi-camera setup. But what we ended up doing is putting the whole movie on a VHS tape. And like I met with this guy in New York who has this whole like VHS lab, and he was like, "How much do you want the warble, and how much do you want it to look like this?" Or so we like, it was like its own little process of like making sure the film looks specific. And I think it kind of works because it makes it feel like this lost tape that you've never seen before, and it's like what gives it kind of an eerie feeling, like there's movement when the film is still.
Eerie is the right word for it, because it just like feels like this sitcom never took off. But it's probably pretty obvious. But like, what was was there an inspiration, a particular sitcom that inspired it, or?
Yeah.
Friends.
Yeah, Friends definitely. I enjoy that show. How I Met Your Mother, and I just grew up watching like a lot of like Disney Channel shows or like Nickelodeon shows. I was like obsessed with those when I was a kid. So I think that also just that kind of stupid sense of humor had a big influence in the film. Yeah.
And then when the movie makes that transition to reality, how did you figure out what to explore in that sequence? Because everything there seems spontaneous and improvised and a bit random. But how did your approach to directing change in that portion of the film?
Yeah, I originally wanted to do something that was kind of like How to John Wilson. If you've seen that show, it's kind of just like documentary. You just shoot a bunch of random stuff on the street and like just find, watch an old guy get on the bus or something like that. That's what I really wanted to do. I just wanted to like bore people. But I thought that we kind of, as we were developing the movie, we shot all the sitcom stuff first without knowing what it was going to be in the second half. And then we kind of watched that first half of the movie in the end, and we kind of realized like so much of this movie is about like dating in New York, and you're in your 20s, and you kind of don't know what your life is going to be like, all these things. So I felt like it made more sense if the movie, if the stuff in the second half was also about life in your 20s in New York. And so I shot some stuff with my friends. That it was like we developed scenes that were kind of based off of my friends and built off of that.
And your character at the end resigns himself to just being stuck in this sort of unsatisfying and somewhat shallow sitcom. How does that resignation resonate with you? Is there a feeling like the catalyst for this was that feeling like the catalyst for this project in any way? Or?
Yeah, people always, when I show the movie to people, they're like, "Oh, why doesn't he, like, I'm expecting him to, like, kill everyone, or, like, yell at everyone, or do something," and he kind of doesn't. And I think, that's how most people behave in society. They just, if you can't beat them, join them. All right, I'm gonna just try to be like everyone else and try to live my life. And Yeah, just keep moving on. There's no answer. It's just like that's how life is. You just have to keep living it.
It's living reality. Right?
Yeah.
And finally, Joe, the reality of hope. You've done a lot of documentaries shot inside VR. What initially drew you to that?
I think it was hard to ignore making a film about Haiyu and photographers, as they're known in the documentary. I discovered their story through a friend of mine I'd met in virtual reality, making my previous film, and he was kind of coming up with the concept of making a documentary about them. And I came on board to direct the film, and in the exact moment that they were confirmed to be a match after the initial testing period. And I had a lot of my own gratitude and personal attachment to the value of meeting people in real life after meeting in VR and the meaning of that friendship. And so their story and making a film about it felt like a really beautiful way to give back to that feeling, whilst also raising awareness around dialysis treatment and kidney failure in young people, of course. So that there's a lot of personal attachment to my own experiences in VR, and also their sense of humour to the situation and their resilience, and I just knew that people will be able to forge an empathy with them in a really unique way.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly relate to it. I'm sure others in here can relate to that idea of just like finding that random person out there in the world through, if not VR, just, I'm dating myself, message boards. Which is where I back to 20 years ago, I made new friends on a message board out of an obscure thing, and it changed my life in a lot of ways. So I was wondering if you could just expand a little bit on, because you kind of answered my second question, but expand a little bit on a personal experience where you were in a VR or something like that, where that kind of changed, almost change the trajectory of your life in a way? Or?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I certainly have a personal story. I made a film called We Met in Virtual Reality in 2022, and through the making of that film, I met my partner in real life, my now girlfriend, in VR. And we never thought that our friendship over 2 years would then blossom into something more, but we just discovered mutual feelings and so many mutual interests that just resonated so much. And we had our first date at the premiere of that film at Sundance.
Oh,
I'm very
wow.
fortunate to say I think that's quite a wicked first date for an independent film. And we've been together ever since, and I think the experience of the uniqueness of getting to know someone for their kind of different truths, their real self and their virtual identity, I think can be so special and so incredible in its meaning, and so yeah, there was a lot of feelings there from meeting my partner as one story of how meaningful it can be.
So what was a day of filming like for something like this when you're with these guys? At what point did you say, okay, I'd like to put on the headsets and talk about this? Or what was the process like of making those decisions about when to go from real life into VR?
Yes, well, it's worth saying in terms of how the virtual reality scenes were filmed, I am a filmmaker in headset myself, and so I'm with my photographer so they can see me holding a camera, and we're almost shooting like we're on a real film set. In a typical documentary form, we're doing an interview and I'm asking questions, and it feels very immersive in that way. In terms of structuring the film, we knew we wanted to introduce them as their avatars because it felt like that was the most playful and truthful to their character as well. They're such funny people, and their avatars also have a lovely sense of humour and just a warmth to them that it just felt natural. And then the transition from VR to real life, there's a huge contrast between Haiyu's thriving social life in VR and the sort of isolation he was in when he was in treatment. And so it was that contrast we really wanted to respect. Haiyu also would wear his headset when he was on dialysis a few times, And so he was socializing in VR a lot whilst he was on treatment. We wanted to also pay respect to that. So doing the transition in his dialysis room and kind of playing on that space as a poetic space just felt like the most impactful thing to do.
And I can't believe I didn't write this question down, it just came to me. So you're in the VR with them, you have an avatar. What's your avatar?
Yeah, good question. Almost every single shoot that we did for this film, I was the only human in the room. Everyone was a furry, and I would get looked at like, human guy in the middle of this. So I think if anyone's played Animal Crossing, I look kind of like an Animal Crossing boy. People a lot of the time compare me to like a Boy Scout with a camera. So that's just an image in my head.
I think we have time for a question or two. If anybody has one, I can't really see if any hands are up. I don't see any. All right, so I'll, I see one waving back there, yes.
I have a question with Chase at the end with the, how much of that was improv? You said you had a script, but it felt very improv between the actors.
Yeah, one of the things that I can't stand is hearing someone say lines that I wrote the way that I wrote them, and they sound horrible. I don't know if you guys can relate. You're like, ooh, that was much better in my head, and then this. So yeah, sometimes that would happen, and I'd be like, oh, this just isn't working. You guys get where the scene's going, like let's workshop this a little bit. I would say with Andre, I definitely gave him more free reign, just to kind of own the script a little more. So he probably, I would say like 80% was stuff that I wrote, and then 20% this the funniest stuff. I'll to his credit. Like the colonial pen users, that's 100% Andre. I didn't even know what a colonial pen is, but it's the most consistent laugh. So yeah, that was him, and then Darby was a little more traditional. She could roll with Andre for sure, but she was like I'd say like 95% kind of the things that I wrote for her. So, but both are just brilliant, and I'm just the success of the film is on their shoulders. They're just wonderful to work with.
Yeah, the active shooter line kills me every time. So much. Anybody else? Just, the next one next is it? Yes, I see it.
So how are those two doing, the donor and the recipient? How are they doing now? Has it been a while?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Another one I should have written down. That solved my game.
Hayu and Topros are in really good health. The doctors were right to say that it was a super kidney. They couldn't be doing better. In fact, it was such a successful transplant that the hospital in Stockholm used it as a reference for other transplants. It couldn't have gone better, truly, and so I'm so pleased that was the outcome. Naturally, filming the journey, we didn't know which way it was going to go. So I'm so happy that this film is a celebration of their triumph. I was with the photographer yesterday, in fact, so he's doing good. He's come to a lot of the film screenings.
Great. All right, Joe, Philip, Carlos, Chase, thank you so much for coming. And the four of us are going to go